Yeah, we just got word that this vehicle is traveling north on 107th Avenue now, coming up on Van Buren. Yeah, and from that vantage point, when we saw the officers throw out those stop sticks, it almost looked as if perhaps it may have nailed one of the tires. It was really, really close, kind of hard to see from our vantage point, but we saw a little bit of smoke. This vehicle will be coming up actually coming up at a stop at this intersection.
Okay, and now I want you to watch carefully if you're watching this at home. We're on a 7-second delay. The driver is getting out and is going to attempt to carjack a second vehicle.
And it looks like he's...
The door is open. Yep, they're pulling the driver out, and Andy, sure enough, he gets out, and he's now in this white pickup truck that you're looking at as he sideswipes that reddish SUV and continues on through the intersection. And Andy, the driver now getting more desperate.
Yeah, unfortunately, you know, the stop sticks couldn't stop him, and he was able to get to another position and now take another car. He's showing that he's actually has no regard for other people's safety or life, and he's become a real danger to the public. So law enforcement's going to look for an opportunity as safe as they can do to try and take him away. Hopefully there's nobody else in that truck that he's driving now.
So perhaps now he, as you pointed out, he's in the median and the turn lane in the wrong way, driving through the median. This driver now, as you pointed out, Andy, and it's worth repeating, will dictate how the police respond.
And we understand that he is now on the frontage road, heading east, just alongside I-10. You have to think, thank goodness, he did not harm that lady who was in this pickup truck right here.
And Andy, for our folks watching at home, the driver of that pickup did exactly the right thing. If you're ever, God forbid, in a situation where you have someone trying to carjack you, you get out and you give them your keys and you move on, correct?
Absolutely, Mark. It's a great point. You know, the best thing to do is to just get out of the way. You know, unfortunately, you know, he's still active, but at least nobody else at this point has been hurt. But you're absolutely right. That woman did the right thing, and that's what someone should do. The problem that could arise is if he tries to get to another vehicle with someone that actually is carrying a weapon or has something in there, there could be some kind of a violent confrontation. So hopefully, you know, law enforcement's looking for that opportunity to get him out of that before that happens. And the actions of the suspect will dictate what the police do now.
And so now, as we watch this driver, who's now has gone from an Audi to this white pickup, becoming more aggressive, committing a carjacking or a truckjacking in this case, driving erratically, will that change the tactics? You say he's forcing the Phoenix Police's hand almost. Will that, how much more aggressive will Phoenix PD become?
Well, it all depends upon what any additional intelligence information the police are able to ascertain now. Someone will be going through the suspect vehicle, see what's in there, try to identify some more about him. Hopefully, if there were any other weapons that they may have been left in that vehicle, but we don't know what's in the truck that he hijacked either. But hopefully the person that was in that truck didn't have a weapon there.
The truck, the white truck you see there, the pickup, is now heading south, has gotten off the freeway, and we're either on 43rd or 35th Avenue, and this is how this chase started. And Andy, if you're the driver of this truck getting on a surface street, is this a bad move?
Well,
by the way, we're
talking
with Andy Hill, formerly with Phoenix PD. He's on 35th Avenue and heading south. Go ahead, Andy. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, it's any move. As long as this guy is still moving in a vehicle, it's a bad move because there's just so many different things that can happen. Now, right now is an opportunity where someone may try and get involved, and innocent people need to stay away because law enforcement may go after him if they're close enough. If not, then they won't. But they're waiting for an opportunity where they can actually box him in, and then he won't be able to get out. And because of his actions, he's been threatening, you know, with his horrible driving and kidnapping in essence, and hijacking. It may not have a good ending.
Yeah, that's what worries me. And also, we see a lot of kids from Carl Hayden High School milling around the streets after they've gotten out of classes for the day. And now you're in an area where there's a lot of folks walking around, not only students, could be on Fillmore right now. We're try to get you the cross streets on exactly where he is. But he's heading into what looks to be, Andy, a more residential area as he continues, or she, we don't know who the gender of the driver, but some close calls with drivers there as this person is obviously very desperate to get away after some sort of a stop was attempted after a robbery.
And it's so scary when you're going through the residential area. Obviously, the speed limit around there is about 35 miles an hour. You don't know if there's going to be pedestrians going, crossing the street or what have you. But now he's going to get back on Van Buren. So obviously, a major road here. He's going to be coming up on a major, busy intersection.
And going the wrong way, I might add, through that intersection, which has disaster written all over it.
Just past 35th Avenue on Van Buren, narrowly missing vehicles right there at that intersection. Not a lot of cars right now, though, where he is headed on Van Buren. In a good way, this is a good thing that there aren't too many cars around him, but now he's turning right again back into a residential area, which this obviously is so scary because, again, you see people walking right there. They could easily get hit if they're not paying attention, or we think that maybe perhaps he may be getting out of this vehicle. Let's see what he does.
Slowing down for a second, but our producers are informing us that he's going to speed back up and not get out of the truck. So you're watching this on a 7-second delay, and so we'll be able to kind of point out to our viewers back home what's about to happen before it happens.
And he's still in this residential area. People nearby wondering what is going on, obviously. He's backing up. And then we understand he's going to go back east on this road. There's no rhyme or reason to what he's been doing lately. We've seen him do U-turns.
As Andy pointed out a second ago, these are the actions of someone who does not want to go back to prison or go to prison.
And he's going the same way where he had started, back to where he was here. Back on Van Buren, back east on Van Buren. So again, hopping from residential area to major streets, going at a high rate of speed here.
And Andy, from past pursuits, once the details start coming out and they ask the question, why did you run? What were you doing? What were you thinking about? They say, I was calling my wife, I was calling my girlfriend, my parents to say goodbye because they know this is going to come to an end. Can you elaborate on that a little bit about what goes on during these chases in the mind of the person driving?
Well, they're in their mind. They know that they're going to get caught, as they always do. None of them ever really get away. So their acts are very selfish and they're self-centered, and they kind of go to whatever they think is nearest and dearest to their heart at the moment, either to say goodbye to somebody, or they want to go ahead and try and get into a place where maybe they can dump the vehicle and try to keep running. But they do know it's going to end, and unfortunately, law enforcement's at the mercy of the actions of the suspect. So there's really no easy way to end this, but at some point you just have to make that decision when it gets too dangerous. But he's really being very, very selfish and just looking to just care about himself, and he's putting so many people at risk. It's just unbelievable.
We know that these car chases, they can be very unpredictable. Each situation is very different, but Andy, you have seen so many of these in all your years in law enforcement. Is there any way to know how perhaps, this would possibly turn out?
Driving
there isn't.
On the median, on the frontage road to I-17, and you can see, as Andy pointed out, Tram, just no regard for people around him or putting others in danger.
Yeah, there's no way to predict what's happened because we really don't know what happened prior to this with all the crimes. Did he point a gun at somebody at the robbery? Did he shoot at anybody? What's his personal history? All those things are intelligence things that are going to have to come out at some point, but it's hard to get all that information together right away. In the meantime, they have to try and stop the immediate action that's going on. So there's really, at some point we'll be able to understand it better, but there's no way to right now because we don't know exactly what's going on. Hopefully at this point law enforcement is getting some intelligence and information and that might help them to know when and where to try and take some other kind of action if they need to.
And we're getting a closer look at the driver. Obviously, it is a man, and looks like he could be fiddling around with something, but traveling at a relatively high rate of speed. He's going east on McDowell, we understand. Still on the streets, though. This guy's been hopping from the streets onto I-10, back on the streets again, onto medians, onto oncoming traffic. It's amazing that this vehicle has not crashed into. Well, actually, we did. I take that back. He did crash
after the carjacking. He did
to try to get out of the box that he
exactly
was in near the intersection.
And so I just want to confirm with our producers, we are going east on McDowell, which means he will be headed into the downtown Phoenix area shortly. Am I right?
He's
right at Grand and McDowell. So yeah, we're approaching the downtown Phoenix area.
If he was apprehended. But now we've got our live shot back from Sky 12 showing you the vehicle that has still remained on city streets here, going at a high rate of speed and blowing through intersections.
Let me just ask the control room if they can orient us so that we can orient our viewers whenever they can, because the shot was down for a while, so I don't want to give anyone any bad information.
And they're still trying to figure out exactly where this vehicle, what street this guy is on as well, just because our chopper signal went down for a couple of minutes there. But again, we just saw somebody on the side of the road there, a pedestrian, narrowly being missed right there.
Mm-hmm. And this is when it gets dicey. This is what Andy Hill was talking about.
Mark, can I throw a point out here that just kind of came to mind as we're looking at some of this?
Go ahead, Andy.
Well, it just came to mind, if that first suspect that bailed out, if the police had that person in custody, that would probably give them some good intelligence information to identify who this other person is. And if the suspect keeps driving this way and is very dangerous, you might see law enforcement back up, because if they can identify who that person is, at some point they might want to consider not going ahead and making this a less dangerous situation, and then just taking their time and locating this person at their speed, at law enforcement speed.
Okay,
and not
we're
during
told
the speed of a pursuit.
Andy, just let me interrupt for a second. We're 19th Avenue and Camelback, and Matt, is the driver on Camelback or on 19th Avenue? 19th Avenue heading north, so they just passed Camelback. Go ahead, Andy. I'm sorry.
Well, just my only point was, at some point it may be something to consider for law enforcement if they can identify exactly who this person is, but they cannot get a great opportunity to take them out without endangering the public to a great degree. They might just let it go at this point.
Right.
And just kind of come back to it and maybe just trail at a distance. So it might be quite some time before they have that opportunity to get a hold of them. But it'll be helpful for them if they were able to get that other person and through intelligence just find out exactly who this driver is.
So for those of you watching who say, why wouldn't police move in? Sometimes it's better to err on the side of caution, right?
It is, especially if you've identified somebody. It kind of decelerates the tension, and if for a long period of time the suspect sees that he's not being followed and there's no attempts by law enforcement, at least the suspect's driving may slow down to the point where it's safe driving instead of just endangering everybody.
And you have to think, Andy, that the fact that he's going alongside light rail here in the area of uptown Phoenix, we were just mentioning Camelback and 19th Avenue, the fact that this vehicle has been jumping in and out of the median, you hope that this vehicle doesn't put the passengers on the light rail in danger by, doing something foolish, obviously. I mean, he's going at a higher rate of speed here. He's speeding up, and this area obviously more congested.
Yeah, he's not taking any slower driving tactics, so, law enforcement's got to keep their distance, but they've got to also stay, parallel or stay close enough to be able to move in if necessary. It's a very tough situation to be in.
So it's almost And that's what. Look at the people in that crosswalk that he came close to hitting. Thank God he stopped and let them clear the intersection. But as he gets more and more desperate, what worries you is that in an effort to get away, he's not going to slow down. And that's exactly what Andy was just talking about. Is sometimes you want to, depending on whatever intelligence they got from the person who was in the car, who hopefully is in custody, and I would pass along that any intel that we can get from Phoenix PD or help that we can get about the person who bailed out would be greatly appreciated. That you want to back off so that this person doesn't put anybody in danger. This driver's now headed north, just crossing the intersection of 15th Avenue and Glendale.
And we should also mention, too, at this hour, there are people getting out of school. I mean, he came close to Carl Hayden High School earlier in the, looked like perhaps South Phoenix area. And then you just saw a couple of school buses as well. You see more pedestrians out. Students could be out. So the time right now at being 3:34, you know, it's a very dangerous time because it's approaching on rush hour traffic and kids being let out of school.
Right. It's not only the drivers, it's the pedestrians. You're right, Tram. And heading north on 15th Avenue, coming up to a very, very heavy residential area. And this is where you worry about a pedestrian being hit, perhaps a hostage being taken.
Kids playing in the streets.
Right. All of that. And Andy, again, just to reiterate, Phoenix PD tactics would be to allow the driver of this car to dictate how this all comes to an end. Based on what you're seeing now as he heads into a residential area, will things start to escalate because he's putting more people in danger?
You know, it's hard to say because there's just so many variables that go on at the same time. But the suspect's actions will continue to dictate the police response, and then at some point, you know, law enforcement's going to have to make a decision, or you know, to change their tactics. Right now, if they're continuing, if the tactic is to wait this person out and just stay and keep an eye on that person, keep your distance. Hopefully, they'll stop and give up. Perhaps there's something going on we don't know about. Maybe the suspect has a phone. Maybe law enforcement has already gotten the information from the other person who this is. Maybe they're trying to talk to that person, the suspect on the phone. I mean, we don't really know enough, but they're going to have to keep abreast of every single thing going on, and at some point, you know, make a decision how they're going to finish this if they need to, or if they're just going to continue waiting. And then that's the constant moment-to-moment process that goes on.
And Andy, if they are laying back a little bit to allow this to continue, would that say to you, based on your experience after years with Phoenix PD, that they have determined that this guy is extremely desperate and dangerous, and so it's better to let this sort of see how it plays out versus trying to force something?
Yeah, sometimes that's in your favor. I mean, the risk is that, you know, something else happens and that might not have happened, but obviously at this point the actions of this suspect indicate that he's willing to, you know, cause damage, to put other people's lives at risk, and to take a hostage, to hold somebody at gunpoint, or to threaten their life. So you're dealing with, you know, the highest circumstances. On the side of the suspect giving up, if he hasn't hurt anybody at this point, he's much better off stopping now and just dealing with what comes forward, rather than putting his own life as well as everybody else's in danger.
The driver just turned west on Dunlap and is coming up towards 19th Avenue. And we're being told from by our producers that he is now turning into an another extremely heavily residential area, and getting off of, I guess it's good, getting off of Dunlap.
Yeah, but these residential areas are always so scary because you don't know if kids could be in the streets. You know, it's usually 35 miles an hour. You've got school buses letting these kids off. We saw this vehicle pass by a couple of school buses. Let's recap you on exactly what's been happening for at least an hour now. It's been over an hour that this vehicle started in the West Valley, And right now it's turning onto 19th Avenue North. And so this chase, it started in the West Valley. This guy went on streets, and then he proceeded to carjack another vehicle, which is the one that you're seeing right here, this white pickup truck. Luckily, the lady inside that truck, the driver, she was okay. She freely gave this person the truck to just take off in. That's when, as he was getting out, he swiped another vehicle trying to get out of the intersection here. And now this vehicle has gone on I-10 and back on the streets now through
on
Central
Hatcher,
Phoenix.
Just to pass along to our viewers, eastbound on Hatcher. Not a lot of room in this area, I can tell you from experience, to maneuver. And our picture is frozen again. Yeah, okay, it's unfrozen. We're in good shape.
And we understand this pickup truck will be coming up behind a school bus. And like we were saying, this is the time when kids are being let out of school. So again, very dangerous, not just to regular drivers trying to get home or get places, but obviously a lot of the school kids that are around the area.
Andy, this has gone on for at least an hour and a half that we know of. Is he sort of coming up on the time limit that you give someone like this, or is there nothing set in stone?
No, you can't give in to that it's been long enough, unless the actions of the suspect indicate that he's getting more dangerous or more likely to do something else, like trying and carjack another car. So you just have to be patient and wait, but the circumstances will dictate it, and they'll make the best possible decision that they can make, which of course is always going to be under question because there's so many variables.
And we just passed Peoria, is what I'm being told. And again, the driver of this pickup has been leading police on a slow speed but dangerous chase, at times going through intersections, through traffic lights, through traffic signs, driving on the median, driving the wrong way, at least one carjacking that we know of. So we know, the one thing we can tell you is that this person is desperate, is dangerous, and is now headed, Matt, did you south on 15th Avenue, but we're being told that the driver will back up and start going the other way.
Which is very familiar of what he has been doing for the past hour plus, is that he has been doing U-turns. He's been a number of times going one way and then literally putting it in reverse and going it the other way. Now he's back into what looks like to be residential area once again, trying to evade police, heading west on this road. It looks like it could be Mountain View Road, but again, going very fast in a residential area.
And I'll just pass along something that Andy said a couple of minutes ago, and this is so true, that as this guy continues to go back and forth basically on residential streets, eventually winding up back on 19th Avenue, is these things you're never going to evade capture. It's just a question of when and how it ends. Does it end with no one hurt? Does the driver get hurt? Does he, God forbid, hurt someone else in the process? But in the end, this driver will be caught and this chase will come to an end. And the longer it goes on, the more inevitable that becomes. And based on other chases that we've followed, he's already exceeded his time limit. So we'll see what happens as you watch this along with us as this chase continues to unfold. But this driver, we can tell you, has put many, many people in the West Valley in danger today, pursuing what appears, running from what originally started as a robbery. We don't know the details of the robbery, but we do know that earlier, about an hour ago, someone, possibly his accomplice, bailed out of the car.
And one thing to note too, Mark, when you talk about putting people's lives in danger, it's actually kind of surprising as you watch this whole thing unfold, is that he hasn't hurt anyone just yet, considering the close calls that he's had with pedestrians right there in a residential area. He has driven by students near Carl Hayden High School as well. He didn't hurt the driver, the original driver of that pickup truck that he had carjacked, thank goodness. But now he's come to a stop.
Okay, now you can see him motioning to someone or talking to someone in another vehicle. We're not quite sure what this entails, whether he's saying get out of the car.
He's reversing. We don't know if these two people perhaps know each other or if they're strangers, but in a very odd fashion, once again, he's putting it into reverse. Who knows where he's going.
Makes it doubly dangerous going down even a side street like this in reverse.
You see apartment complexes nearby, residential homes right there, a pedestrian on the side of the road. He's managed to do that amazingly safely by not hurting anybody. And looks like there's an exchange of words between perhaps the pedestrian and the driver, and then he takes off once again. You have to wonder what he could be saying to these people.
Okay, he's about to get out of the car, so watch this. We're being told that any second now you're going to see the driver of this white truck bail out.
And it looks like he is running into somebody's house right here. Very scary. Looks like alongside of the house, trying to see if he's trying to get into the house. Police right behind him, as you can see.
And Andy, we can see them taking defensive positions behind the tree. So obviously they're going to try to talk to this guy to get him to surrender so that they don't have to fire any shots, correct?
Yeah, they're going to try, and of course they want to get him peacefully. They don't know, though, if he has anybody else inside that house, if he's holding a hostage, or, you know, so they still have a bunch of unknowns, and this guy has done nothing but put everybody at risk. So the actions that law enforcement is going to take are going to be, you know, very steady and sure, but, you know, hopefully it'll be over quick.
And we just saw a woman and a child, a young child, run out of that house. Almost looks like it could be an apartment complex or some kind of a duplex or something. But a large number of officers right there with their weapons drawn, trying to see if they've made entry into that home. A little difficult to see from this vantage point.
And this is the end to, presumably the end to what's been a long police chase through the West Valley. Slow speed for the most part. Police now have what we believe to be a robber cornered inside a unit here. All of the officers armed. And Andy, based on your experience in the past, someone's talking to him, right?
Well, yeah, that's what we'll end up. We have a barricade situation now. We don't know whether he's barricaded by himself or he has any other hostages in there. Law enforcement's going to try and figure that out. Hopefully he'll surrender to them. If not, they'll go ahead and go through their motions and not to try to rush anything to, you know, to end up
Andy,
in a shooting.
We now see,
like they got him.
Yep, looks like they got him. There's someone in handcuffs being walked away. So thank goodness. From what we understand so far, and obviously that can change, and we'll have the details unfolding for you as we get more information coming up at the top of the hour on First at 4. Presumably no one has been hurt, including the driver who you see being walked away, who led police on a long 90-minute plus chase. And at some point, another person bailed out of a car, and hopefully that person has also been apprehended. We have crews on the ground. We will have much, much more on this coming up for you at the top of the hour on 12 News First at 4. But again, this chase has come to an end, thank God, without anyone being hurt. Although there were several close calls, as the driver who you're looking at there in the gray shirt led police on this pursuit, carjacked a truck, sideswiped at least one other vehicle that we know of. This pursuit started at 35th or 45th Avenue and Thomas, went as far as Avondale and Litchfield Park, came back on I-10, resumed on surface streets, came as far east as perhaps 15th Avenue near the fairgrounds. The driver eventually bailed out into this parking lot of an apartment complex, went into an apartment. A woman and a child came out. Police surrounded the apartment, and that man was just brought out to the police car, cuffed and arrested.